Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We are talking to a guy who coaches many people on their business. They're leaders. They could be individuals, just want to up their game. Are you aware of what's going on with your team? Are you aware of the whole situation within your organization? We're going to dig deeper into that today. He is Randy Swaim from coachingforrelevance.com. Randy, welcome. How you doing today?
Hey, Steve, it's always good to be here, man. Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to have you back. You know, this whole thing started just a couple of seconds before we got on, because I know that you have a vast aviation background, flying planes, teaching, and all of that. And I wondered, hey, when you get on a plane, a jet, an airliner, and you're just doing it for pleasure, are you aware of what's going on? Not to like freak mode or anything, but are you watching? And apparently so. You're always watching. You don't even know you're doing it.
And even when you're walking down the street, when I'm driving my car, instead of just looking forward ahead, whether it's in an airplane, a car, working with people or whatever, my awareness is on what's going on. So I can be aware of when unique factors come in that maybe I didn't expect. And am I ready for it? And so that's a key aspect of this whole concept.
Yeah, that there it is right there. Are you ready for things that come up? Those changes, where you can, I'm going this way, but I got to pivot a little bit this way, but I need to do it immediately.
Yeah. And do I know whether I got to move 5 degrees or 90 degrees, kind of thing,
we use the flying analogy, but that could be the same way in business where something came up. You're going to make a decision right away.
Exactly. And, the big thing on this, and that a lot of areas that I bring to the table and work in are areas of neuroscience and, a PhD candidate for neuroscience, and how do you develop your team? And of course, where I'm bringing my doctorate work is, how, aviation instructors at the professional level need to rethink and reapply what they're doing. And I know some of the things that I mentioned to you is there's an article here that that I'm including in a 50-page document that I'm working on, not the whole article, but just some of the insights from it, because it's very aligned with that. And, but it's very key on aircraft accidents and things of that nature. So it's something that we all have to be aware of. And as leaders, do we understand how we have to connect with our people a little bit different so that their brains are in the right place, in the right direction, and they can adjust on their own when they need to, perhaps when we're not there. And that's a whole team synergistic bringing together concept. And it's something that a lot of people kind of forget about, but there's a whole aspect about this brain memory and application. And you've heard me say this on the show a number of times, that if you have somebody on your team that's always going back to their comfort zones, they're missing the boat. And if you as the leader are always going back to your comfort zone, you're missing the boat. And this gets into the heart of just a couple of good points on that for just a couple of minutes.
Am I okay in looking at this from parental eyes, like a parent, because what you're just saying is you make sure your team is ready to go and they can handle things, and then you kind of let them go. And it's almost, a parent when, child turns 18, 21, whatever, now they're going to go off on their own. Kind of sounds the same thing. Would you say there's a similarity there?
There's a real similarity to there. And there's one kind of key interest on that too, with what you just said, because if you think about it, and I love it, Dr. Elam, and I'd have to kind of look at my post to remind myself of his first name, but he's a guy that was given a talk, and it was very good, because it's interesting that if you look at the first 23 astronauts that went into space in NASA, of them, 21 of them were the firstborn children in their families. The other 2 were the only born children in their families. And so a lot of times what parents need to be aware of, that it's one way how this can come into play with your kids. And that is, if you have 3 or 4 children,
wow,
are you connecting with the 3rd and 4th one in a way where they sense you believe in them, where you're not just saying, hey, your older brother does this, why don't you do that? And that kind of stuff. And so that when all of them get to the point where they go out for their dreams, that they're ready for it. And so that's just a little good addition point that you that goes with what you said, because it is, that whole process comes into play with that for sure.
Oh my gosh. I mean, great for parents to realize that, because how many times I think almost every parent would say this. The firstborn, it's like, oh, I got to take care of, I've never had a kid before, extra TLC. And then by the time, the third one comes along, yeah, it's all good. Yeah, I got this. You kind of take the foot off the pedal of the parenting gas.
Yeah. And, a lot of times, and it's kind of a dysfunctional way of doing it, but there are parents sometimes that will sit there and tell the older one, go take your brothers or sisters to bed or something like that, kind of thing, instead of connecting with all of them in such a way that they feel that oneness with you, that they're not just somebody behind the scenes here and that kind of thing. All of those are very insidious, subtle things, but it really comes into play like that. And when you're talking about that, it's a very key point when you look at where in your children was this person born. The very first one, second one, third one, fourth one, whatever. And even with your grandkids, kind of down the road, how are you really interacting with them in such a way that you don't let those dysfunctional things come into play? So you're right. When you talk about with kids, a lot of times, guess what? All of that can come into play with them as well.
Wow.
No two ways about it. Yeah. Yeah.
Like how does that whole thing that we're talking about, how does that translate to the workplace, the organization? Does a leader sometimes not put the focus on some employees, but then on others? Let's say, maybe there's a senior manager where, that one got groomed really well. Now we have somebody new coming in and they're like, yeah, you guys take care of that one, instead of giving that one personalized attention.
Yeah. And you know what? It's interesting, because the point about this, and it's good for your children, but it's also good for everybody on your team at the workplace. Every single person is a little bit different.
Yeah.
Are you connecting with them in a way that they are visualizing and exceeding and pursuing their greatest potential in them? And it's interesting that there was one lady on TV that I was listening. She was being interviewed, and she was talking about her journey, her life journey up to where she is now. And she talked about some bad situations that happened to her earlier in her teenage life. And one of the things she mentioned, she said, there was a time when everything came unglued in my life. There was a time when I didn't believe anything. And as I've shared with people before, there was a time when I graduated from high school that was kind of going on in me, although with her, it was worse, kind of thing. And as a leader, do you have a sense of when one person on your team is feeling like everything just came unglued for them, maybe in their personal life, maybe in their business life? If all I do is I go to and point fingers at them and yell at them and command them, and you better do this, and if that's your mindset, you're destroying them. You're not helping the team. You're not helping them overcome and get to where they're going. If they have a sense that you're connecting with them in a way, you were talking about the concept of collaboration a couple of weeks ago. And, if you're connecting with them in a way where they have a sense that you understand what they're dealing with, but that you also believe that they can overcome, guess what?
Yeah.
There's going to be a time where they go, you know what? Yeah, let's do this. And now it's all coming from inside with them. And so all of that is aspects about this. Is that matter with flight crews? Yep. With teams in any kind of business, anywhere? Yep. Whether it's just business, doing, whatever, kind of thing. Are those factors that a leader needs to be aware of? It's not just about you dictating. And that's where a lot of people in today's world, a lot of managers in today's world that sort of become narcissistic in a sense. They think that, it's my job just to make you dependent on me. So, when I tell you something, you got no other option, kind of thing. No, it's where you come alongside and they believe so much, even with maybe what they're struggling with right now. It may be at home. It may be in the workplace. that they can overcome that. And all of a sudden the company goes, wow, look where this guy got to. Wow. I didn't think he'd get there, 6 weeks ago. That amazes me. Look at this lady over here. Man, I would have never thought that she was capable of that. Or they came up with an idea that made the whole company go, boom, yeah, kind of thing. And all of those are aspects that when you're talking about being a leader, you have to understand how to truly connect with your people, and also be aware of, are you aware of when their mental aspects, the neuroscience aspects, are either shutting them down or they're missing things or whatever. And sometimes when you ask them the right question and they go, oh, wow, you know what? That's a good question. Wow. Yeah, I know what the solution is on that. Let's do this, and magical things can happen when you do that sort of stuff as a true leader and not as just kind of a dictatorial person. But guess what? Whether you're talking about your kids, whether you're talking about your grandkids, whether you're talking about your team, whether you're talking about your flight crew, your baseball team, or whatever, kind of thing. Those are some of the factors that you got to be aware of. And leaders understand it's not about you just dictating to people, but it's about you coming along and joining them and helping them, not because you're telling them, but sometimes because you ask the great questions and you begin to understand them and they start to believe in you. And they start to believe in where they're going and what they're capable of doing. And wow, yeah, let's do this.
You said something before.
That's huge.
I thought was huge a few moments ago, in that identifying that somebody on your team is having a challenge, whatever it might be.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
It is.
However, even more so, this is what I'm getting from you. When you realize that that person is going through maybe a personal challenge, whatever it might be, that you give them the feeling of confidence that they can overcome it and move forward within their life and also duties at work. Because you never want to have that. It's great to recognize that they have challenges, but you never want them thinking that, oh, yeah, my boss knows that, I have this thing going on at home, and they're probably going to look at me like I'm busted, like the wheels coming off the car, and then I got issues here, and then they're going to lose their confidence in me. Then I'm going to lose my job, blah, 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 and all these thoughts go in your head. But just to say, hey, I realize things are going on there, but you're doing a great job, and just, I'm here for you. That
you can get there. And the other part of it too is kind of interesting that sometimes, and let's face it, sometimes they're going to be dealing with something that we dealt with at one point in our career.
Well, true.
And you know what? There's been one or two times where I've actually come along with somebody and I said, you know what? I know what you're saying because I had to deal with that one time. And you know what? I got through it. Trust me, if I got through it, you can. And I know you can. You got what it takes. And so, that there's an aspect of that that's not just about dictating and ordering and threatening, but coming alongside your team and really, and you know what? If you model that as a leader, let's just say that you have 15 people on your team that report to you. What if, because you modeled that kind of behavior, 12 or 13 of those 15 people adapted their behavior to do the same thing? And all of a sudden you have a whole team that even when you're not there, they are doing that to each other and making each other believe and helping each other and coming alongside and working together. You know what? That's synergy. That's that aspect. And that's one of our roles as a leader, for sure. No two ways about it.
Do you think that some leaders don't show that compassion for their team because they're afraid of looking vulnerable, like they're softening up a little bit?
Yeah. Let me put it to you this way. If you don't mind me, and you and I'll both kind of smile on this, I'll bet, but I would rephrase what you said. And I said, are there managers that I think are afraid of that? Yeah. True leaders are not. There's a lot of managers that would sit there, and because their focus is, I need to show that I'm up here and stuff like that. Sometimes, they're going to kind of be afraid of that. But you know what? True leaders understand the real nature of leading and modeling and that synergy and that oneness and that teamwork. And, real leaders understand that there is some role in that. Now, do they necessarily do it every time? No. Do they necessarily have to give every single detail of everything they, struggled with in their life's journey? No. But they communicate and connect with their people in a way that they go, you know what? I know you felt like you failed in that situation. You know what? I did as well one time in my life. And you know what? I was able to get through it. I was able to overcome it. You know what? I know you have it within you to do that. I believe in you. And that's huge. But that's why I say people that their whole mindset is about just dictating and managing and, controlling and threatening, not so much. They have that sense of, well, I don't want to do that because it just takes the attention off me or whatever, kind of thing. But true leaders understand the nature of that, about how you really get your team overcoming and really reaching radical success. And so that's how I would answer that question.
I knew where you go. Knowing you, I knew where you're going with that before you even finished the sentence. It's like, yeah, let me think of the language. Yes. Okay.
I think I'll change the language, but just slightly on it. But yeah, is that something that leaders and people that are looking to become leaders have to be aware of, about that nature of it? Yep. Or do they have to get a sense of how they're going to connect in that way with the different people in their team? Yep. Do they have to kind of get some thoughts on that? Yep. Sometimes is that little aspect of kind of working with them such that it's done before the need for that understanding comes on scene? Maybe, connecting with them in such a way so that they're prepared for when something kind of seems to, collapse or something. They don't even have to sit down and cry about it, because you know what? Yeah, yeah, we can get beyond this. We can do this. Boom. And they keep going. And so it's an aspect, that's part of that aspect of developing, if you think about it with your team and all. But those are just some key aspects about what you're talking about, for sure.
How does it feel for you when you work with somebody, either, from the aviation level where you teach a pilot something new, or on the coaching side when you work with somebody and you can see in their face that they feel your compassion, or they feel your approval that, yeah, you got it. All right.
Yeah.
That feel great, right?
Yeah. And you know what? You get a sense where they believe in you, and they believe in what you're telling them. And they go, you know what? Yeah. And I tell you, there's I've seen people that have failed check rides before in the airplane. And when they find out that the person that gave them their check ride stood there, and the person that was flying the airplane with them both said, well, I know what you mean, because you know what? I've failed a check ride before, or whatever. And they go, what? Yeah. Yeah. Really?
And define, just so we all have it, a check ride is?
A check ride is somebody's certification for a particular airplane, like a Learjet or a Challenger or a Gulfstream or something like that. They have to undergo what's called a practical test in that airplane, where they have to demonstrate single engine maneuvers and various approaches, and all the systems knowledge and use and all this sort of stuff. But they have to meet standards. You can't retrain anything on a practical test, and so they have to do it. So if there's any single maneuver that does not meet standards, the overall check ride has failed. And that can kind of bite them. And I shared, I think, this one story with the lady that I had to fail one time for one maneuver. And I told her, I think I shared this with you, but I told her, I said that I had already called her, or her chief pilot had called me, and we had a conversation. And I told the chief pilot, I said, I want to tell you that she's going to be a good pilot for you. She just had one critical thing at one point. Can it be overcome pretty quickly? Yeah, I think so. And I said, in my experience of working with her, I think that she's also going to be a really good team member for your company and your operation. And he really thanked me for that. And I gave her recheck, and all was good and all that. But she was just going crazy on herself, feeling so beat up because she failed and all this sort of stuff. And what was amazing is, right after we did the recheck, where everything was good and she was going to get signed off. We were coming off motion, and she was overly apologetic for the frustration she was experiencing earlier and all that kind of stuff. And I told her, I said, I want you to understand something. She said, what? Not even using her name, kind of thing. And I said, but I want you to understand something. She said, what? And I said, you don't need to apologize for anything. You don't need to apologize for one thing. You were just going through a tough moment in your journey. That's all. And you got through it. You got there. And she was just very appreciative. In fact, when it was all done, she was getting ready to leave. She came up and we just gave each other a quick brother and sister in aviation hug, kind of thing, of appreciation stuff. And but yeah, when you interact with people in a way that I've known of some instructors and some examiners that after a check ride, they walk up to the client and they go, well, I kind of gave to you on this one, kind of thing. And what that's doing is trying to pull everybody under your control, kind of thing. And they know that, and that's dysfunctional and it's unethical and really not right. But the way you interact with people that are in a struggle or whatever, kind of thing, is key when you're talking about successful leadership. And like I mentioned, there's been a couple of times in my journey where somebody was almost embarrassed to tell me about something that they had struggled with in their life. And I looked at them without missing a boat. And I said, there's been like 2 times in my life where I've had to do this. But in both times I looked at them and I said, well, I know what you mean, because you know what? That was a struggle in my life at one point as well.
Sure.
And it looked at me and went, really? And I went, yep, I know what you mean, man. I know what you mean. But if I can get there, you can get there. And I believe you can, There that is huge. That is huge.
Leading by example.
Yep, it is. That's part of that modeling.
We're just about out of time. I'm just going to say, when we talk about the check rides, right away, I just have a flashback to the road test, the driving road test.
Yeah.
Kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
You're available to help anybody in all different aspects, whether they are leaders, want to be better leaders, managers, or just, individuals who want to up their game. Coachingforrelevance.com is the website. And they can go to my website and get my contact information on them. As I tell people, I've shared it on the show before. I don't do cold calls, so you're not going to get a sales pitch. If somebody calls me and they need something, we'll talk about it. And but you don't have to feel like you're going to get a real big sales initiative from me, unless you need something and you want me to do something, kind of thing. So it'll be getting to know people and getting a sense of what they're wanting to accomplish. And by the way, Randy might call you from 15,000 feet up. You never know.
That's right. That's right.
Happen.
You know what? You never know.
Never know.
So that's the fun of it for sure.
Randy, always great having you on. I appreciate you and all the insight and all your experience, and look forward next time we talk.
Sounds good, Steve. Listen, you have a good one. I appreciate it.
You too. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.